Hey, welcome to the Runaways podcast. My name is Cody. On today's episode, we are going to be talking about the Battle Hardened Cincinnati. We're going to talk about the new hero that was released. Dan is going to share his experience on the cruise. We will also actually be recording our spoiler video on the podcast tonight. However, you do have to wait till Tuesday for that segment of the podcast to come out, and we'll release that by itself. And then we'll have the main topic, which is should you main a deck? Should you have one deck? Should you have multiple decks? But tonight I am joined with Dan, as well as the one and the only, at his first time on the podcast, the Prism Simp, the number one, Pheano.
I'm less upset about you pulling me away from Honkai Star Rail. I don't have to wait till Tuesday to see the spoiler card. This is broken.
You do get to see the spoiler night, and you weren't aware of that before I just said it, which I just realized.
Oh, that's awesome.
So that will be a good segment when we get there. And then for everyone who's listening to this before, you'll see that segment released on Tuesday, which should be fun as well. And Dan just got back from the cruise, and I don't think you look any tanner, but I heard that you had a great time, and I saw you a million times on Twitter. So now you're Twitter Dan.
Yeah,
from the
Flake
cruise.
did a great job of posting pics of me. I think Sam posted some too.
It was everybody.
Yeah. No, dude, the crew that we had was so good. It was like some of my favorite people, but it was like guys I never get to hang out with because it's like the casters and really there's a lot of casters and content creators and a few judges. And we're all doing like different all day, everyday things during events. So it was really cool to hang out with them. But no, the cruise was awesome. Not a lot of sun. Like the weather was very comfortable. It was like 70s every day, but cloudy and windy. So it was a lot of outside time, but no tan to show for it.
Was it cold? Was it warm?
In between.
Okay.
Cold at night, very comfortable during the day. Never hot, I would say. None of the pools were heated. So that was interesting. But we had hot tubs. So I would like go in the hot tub, get a little too hot, cold shock myself in the pool, and just keep flip-flopping. Yeah, it was a great time, though. I highly recommend, if anything like this ever happens again, to check it out.
Awesome.
I can certainly share more about it if you want.
Yeah.
I was immensely jealous. You were posting pics at the same time we were having a blizzard here.
It wasn't even me. I had no internet. I didn't pay for Wi-Fi, so I had no internet access the whole weekend. So like other people were posting pictures of me. I was hearing about new heroes getting released and Bravo's top 8ing battle hardens. It's crazy stuff. I don't know. I was removed from the internet world for a couple of days, which is super nice.
Sweet. So let's move into our first topic then. It's we're going to talk about Victor Goldmane, High and Mighty. He's the new hero who was just released, and he's a guardian. And it says the first time each turn you create a gold token with an effect that you control, draw a card. And then the first time each turn you would fail to win a clash. Instead, you may destroy one of your gold that you control. And if you do, put one of the revealed cards on the bottom of the owner's deck, then clash again. So that is either player's deck. So essentially, you make a gold card, make a gold coin, draw a card, and then when you clash, you get to kind of redo your clash, essentially, which is pretty cool. He does
you get to play Arachne, right?
Yes. Well, yeah, you get to redo it if you lost. Is essentially.
But you can redo their card.
Use that. Yeah, yeah. So that.
Oh, is it both cards, not just your own?
It's either player.
Yeah, so I'm saying you can like mimic Arachne and look at their top card and bottom it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and you still get the mill plan with the hammer, which you haven't gotten to yet. But so it is like most of our other hammers we've gotten, 3 cost for 4 power, and it is importantly a one-handed hammer, and so that means that you could either put a shield with it or talking about this earlier today, just wield 2 hammers just in case you get the negative side of the effect of this. Maybe you just want to have a backup hammer. So it has an effect. When this hits a hero, clash with them. If you win, destroy the top card of their deck. If they win, you put a -1 counter on the hammer. So that's where the dual wielding hammers could come in, where maybe you have a backup plan. Okay, well, I lost. I still have another hammer that's for 4. That might not be good enough, but like that was a fun thought. So you have like this kind of caked in mill plan potentially with it, which kind of lends itself more to that cosplay Arachne comment that you had a minute ago, Dan, where we get to manipulate the top cards of the decks a little bit. We get to kill cards off the top of the deck. So maybe we see a fatigue-oriented style with this Guardian. Could potentially see you go either direction, where the gold token extra draw, maybe you just have a value-oriented game plan. I think it's going to be really interesting with this hero.
I agree. I keep seeing people comment that like its effect, like its negative side of the hammer is like really bad. So maybe you can't play it as like real fatigue. And I'm sitting here like, do you know how annoying a 1 damage hammer swinging at you every round would be if like they're playing the fatigue side? Like you're not going to win by damage most of the time anyway, especially if you're milling like one of their cards. And you have to lose a clash and you have a second shot at the clash. Like it's actually kind of hard to get counters on this. And all I've seen is people talking about how easy it would be to get counters on that. And I'm like, yeah, maybe on like sealed and stuff, it's going to be pretty easy because you'll both have giant cards, but he's a guardian. So he should have a ton of attack. And then like most of the decks that you're playing against are not going to have as many 8s and 9s and 7s, and you get a redo on top of it. So it's like, who cares if it goes to 3 or 2 or 1? All you care about is the effect. And if you in their deck, like, if you build like 8 cards over the course of a game, or 7 cards, or 6 cards, you hit like a whole cycle. You mess up a pitch stack if they're trying to set that up. But if you just skip 2 of their turns, like you essentially just gained like 12 health, because like every card that you take away, you're gaining 3 health essentially.
And messing with their pitch stack also can like be an important factor of your anti-fatigue strategy, where like they're trying to set up this end game to beat you because they understand your fatigue. Well, now you're stopping them from enacting that game plan by messing up their pitch stack. So it means that they might have to beat you on a different axis.
Yeah, it's a really powerful effect. I remember I was laying on the beach when I heard about this card. Again, no internet.
They're just rubbing it in more. Come
just
on.
having the perfect day at Coco K. It was amazing. But all the other guys were like hyped up about the new hero and the weapon, and they were like explaining the effect to me and the 4 power. I was like, I swear to God, this better not be another one-handed weapon. Like, I feel like Guardian gets such special treatment. Like, they get the best weapons in the game. And by the way, here's a shield you can just have for free. So it seems pretty strong.
At least he doesn't get the ice shield.
And you're not trying to fatigue in like guardian mirrors and stuff anyway most of the time, right? Like you're trying to just like play value hands at that point.
Yeah, you just sideboard it out when it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Play a bigger hammer.
But against like an aggro deck, like you're sitting across from Phi and you're just like, this thing is never getting to 0. Like it doesn't matter if you're fatiguing them. You're playing against a Phi, you're not going to get your hammer to 0.
Well, that then depends on if you're playing the non-attacks. I've been reserving judgment a little bit on like evaluating the new heroes so far, because we don't have the full picture. And like in his case, a lot of what we've seen has just been like non-attacks and such. And it's like, well, am I trying to clash with Boast in my deck? Like, what does the texture of this deck look like? And I think we don't have the full picture yet. Because like, am I going to execute this inconsistent strategy by throwing these cards that literally can never win a clash in my deck?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think you also, so you have like 2 shots on your own deck as well if you hit those cards. So you have to fail a double flip against like an aggro deck who's obviously running mostly like 3s and 4s. You have to fail that 4 times to not have a win condition through damage to your weapon. So you have to lose a double flip 4 times.
It's all math you can build around.
Yeah. I think it's pretty good.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting. I don't know if I'm excited about it. I don't really like built-in fatigue is a lot less exciting, I think.
Yeah.
Especially you could also incorporate like top of deck manipulation cards to further improve your odds, like Fate Foreseen and such.
Yep. I agree. And then also, is it only for Shield that Guardian can remove counters from? I know they have all those cards that like no one ever plays.
Yeah, there might be a card that exists that does it. You're right.
Yeah, I was wondering
it on Twitter though. Surely someone would have been like, "You can do this
someone
combo
must
that
have.
costs 8 resources."
Yeah, and you start like refunding getting the things off of your hammer later in the game.
Yeah, it might exist.
Maybe he could just buy a new hammer. That sounds on flavor for him.
Wait, that'd be fun.
Spend 3 gold, get a new hammer.
I think going back to the hero, something really interesting, like drawing a card in a game where you get 4 cards a turn is like insane. But like historically, Guardian scales kind of poorly.
Yep.
with cards, right? Like you don't have a bunch of go agains. Like if you had, I don't know, 3 blues and a crippling crush, unless you draw exactly pummel, I don't know what you're.
Well, he
I
gets
guess you're gonna arsenal there.
I guess he can cantrip if we ever get anything that's like make a gold, right? He can just like cantrip that
Oh,
card.
that's true. Yeah.
But I don't think we're gonna get any of those have go again. I mean, we
Yeah,
might, but
he needs like a shock charmers. I feel like a consistent mana sink, right? To always get value from the extra card.
Some of it could just be him trying to fix the Bravo problem of like Bravo can have these like turns where he's like, I have all the time in the world to do my thing, but my hand is butt cheeks. Let me try to filter through my cards to find a relevant threat with these golds.
Yeah, that does seem strong.
Yeah.
I think Sigil would be like insanely good because you're drawing cards, but then if you're clashing, you don't want Sigil. So he's interesting.
Also
I think
fun-
he's a deck building puzzle, and like you said, we need more pieces.
Also, an effect like Crown of Seeds definitely seems like it would be ridiculous in him to be able to like filter even more cards, or also like when I gold into a doo-doo card, I can just set it and get rid of it. Thankfully, he's not Earth. Thank God.
I don't know. He has potential. That's
agreed.
That's I see this. I see a lot of like potential. I also see a lot of pitfalls as well. I mean, is it he the only person who has like a real ability off Clash as well? Like no one
I think
else is
he's
really
the
built
only
around Clash.
Yeah. He's no Betsy, but he looks cool.
Yep. And then we didn't. His weapon, I believe, is like rare, so we don't have the token weapon yet. Which is it's probably gonna be like a. Do you think it's gonna
I
be
heard
like
a
a
rumor
Titan's
it's Titan's
Fist?
Fist. That's what I heard.
I figured. What else are they gonna make? You can't
It
make
should be,
something.
I think.
Yep.
I could see them do a worse Titan's Fist for limited.
How do you make it worse? It's a 2, and then if you play a 3, then it gets +2.
I think they just won't print a shield, right?
Yeah, they did.
You'll just run 2 hammers. Wait, did they?
There's a shield at common
in the new set?
Yeah. Bloodied Oval, I think it's called. Yeah. It's an offhand generic shield, and it changes its value based on a number of opposing heroes, but essentially it's going to have 1 blade break.
I remember this now.
You're behind.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Changes the multiplayer.
It's like Tales of Aria, right? It's the same thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
One little block.
Close. We're getting close to getting spoilers. This has been a tough week without them, but
it's
hopefully next week we can dig a little deeper into some of these heroes or some of these new cards as well. Okay. Next thing.
Dig up some dinner.
Yeah. No one's ever used that card before. The next thing we're going to talk about is Battle Harden that just happened, which we have like no information on. Like we don't know like how many of each hero was brought. We don't even have deck lists. We basically know who was in the top 8 and what heroes made it and like who won, which is a little frustrating to deal with. We should have probably more information than that. But the people who don't know, the winner was Michael Hamilton on Bravo. And he also played against his good friend Roger Bodie on Bolton, which is pretty exciting for Bolton.
Oh,
that was a great picture.
Yeah, that's such a fun moment.
Yeah,
I know Cody's been in that moment before too, right?
Yeah, at a previous game that I played when at Nationals, I went 1-2 with one of my teammates, which was pretty cool.
So the picture on the one side, you had Hamilton, just his big goober smile. He's just having the time of his life. He's so happy. And the other side, I'm here for no more fun and games. Our friendship ends now.
I didn't see that. That's great.
I'm taking your lunch money, Hamilton.
Yep. Shout out to Lucas, top 4, I believe.
Yep.
I think. Our reports were so scuffed. We were at dinner on the cruise ship and I had no internet. So I heard Lucas made top 4 and Bolton's in the final. I was like, okay.
Man, we get it. You were on a cruise. We're jealous.
And then, he lost to Roger. So Lucas lost to Roger the round before. We had, I think, 3 Bravos.
Wait, really? And he's still on the team?
No, he's not. We released him. That was the deal that we made with him.
He is typically on the podcast, but not today.
Not today. He lost to Roger, and he brought Bravo.
That's why I'm on. That makes sense.
Yep.
I think, isn't Bolton supposed to be quite favored into Bravo? I remember testing that with you, Cody, like 10 metas ago, and it was just like unwinnable for Bravo if Bolton played combo. But I heard he didn't play combo.
He did not. He switched it up because I believe.
I wish there was footage of that.
Yeah, I know. It would be nice if we had any.
When I was talking to Yuki and Ellie about it,
Mm.
they were also saying that it's quite favored, and I don't quote me, but I believe they were saying that you didn't need to play combo into it, and you just it wasn't necessarily a combo, but you just played for these like really big turns that went over the top of what the Bravo could deal with, and it didn't need to be a combo. It was just like
It's like Blood Rush kind of thing where you go
yeah,
3 times and then they die
and then,
because you have soul and
yeah,
7 go again's a
exactly.
good card.
I believe that's what they said. It was a conversation at the 20K, so I don't 100% remember.
Yeah, I can buy that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounded like Lucas won in Swiss, and then in the top four, Roger switched strats, and he was not ready for it, and Roger was able to take the win that way. I would have loved to know how many Bravos showed up because I feel like that number is probably pretty high, and I would have loved to see the breakdowns of everything. But
I also just want to know who was at this event.
it was big.
Like I saw the top 8 and that's it. I don't know
There's like
who else
120 people
participated.
there.
That's
Sheesh.
great.
Yeah.
Were there a lot of big names? Who was in the field? I think I saw a picture of Brody and Fang there at some point.
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that.
Oh,
Yeah.
really hurts when you don't have great coverage.
And then I think the PTI event the next day was won by Dromai. So a little bit of
Okay.
Dromai there.
If I
as
remember
well.
correctly, there were no Dromai in the top 8
Nope.
at the Battle Harden.
Mm-hmm.
Only data point that I cared about. I was just like,
Yeah, I saw that too. It's so weird, man. Like it was like consensus best deck when Icelander was around, and now it's like consensus worst deck.
It's because there's
Dromai?
Yeah.
too many ninjas floating around.
Yeah. Ninja
There's-
Brute Guardian meta,
I think there was
guess. Makes
two
it hard.
ninjas in the top 8, like one Fi, one
Mhm.
Katsu as well. So it's just kind of annoying if you bring Dromai and you get like, it's not an auto loss. They can battle back now, but like it's super negative, and Pheano knows this more than anyone. And it's just like annoying if you already have some close matchups that can be tough, and then you're just like, oh, I ran into 2 Fis, so there's 2 of my losses right now, and I have to completely win every other match, right?
Yeah, at Worlds, that killed me. Just
Mhm.
round 1 ran into Phi, whiffed a turn 1 Tomotai, lost the game instantly. Though I will say at the 20K, I think I was 3-1 into ninjas. So
Yeah.
like that then flipped. Like I same thing happened. I got the turn 1 against one of them, turn 1 Tomotai. This time I didn't whiff. So it was like completely different game. But that's just like Dromai being a very variance heavy deck now, and I don't enjoy that, but it is what it is. Not the point of the conversation though.
No, yeah, but that's why I think it's kind of up and down results as well. I mean, I still don't think this makes Bravo the best deck in the format. Just like winning Worlds did not make Phi the best deck in the format, but tournaments are insular. You cannot always see what is the best by what wins or what tops. That it's not super relevant in a lot of cases. You can only start drawing data points, but we don't have any data to draw any data points, unfortunately. If Bravo was the most brought hero, then having 3 in the top 8 makes sense. If there's only 5 Bravos and 3 of them made top 8, then that's also like a big significant difference as well. So we just don't kind of know what happened there. But it also kind of doesn't matter because the format's about to completely change with all these new heroes, which I'm pretty excited about.
I also feel like that's kind of leading into our conversation of the main topic. Not that we need to segue to that here. I think that a lot of times the best deck isn't always the most relevant thing in Fab, specifically compared to other games. Like other games, it's like if you're not playing the meta deck, or at least close to, like maybe one step down, you're just a clown. Like where that's not always the case in Fab, and frequently not the case.
Mm.
But we can jump on that when we actually go to that topic.
Yeah,
It's wild how viable like every hero is.
Yep,
At
that's
the
exactly
Battle
where
Harden
we were
level, at
going to
least.
go. Yeah, Battle Harden level. I mean, I think it's a hot take, but I think there's more viability at the tier 4 level events than there are at like Callings. I think Callings is one of a harder format in a lot of cases than tier 4 events, due to the fact that CC matters at Callings. Assuming they're calling CC. There's so many rounds of calling
Oh, yeah,
CC
no, for sure.
that your
Mhm.
calling deck is like your classic constructed deck is incredibly important, and I think those are kind of hard to win like 14 rounds and only lose 2 when there's like a divorce, pretty wide open format, and versus like you're playing at a tier 4 event and you're like, I play 8 rounds of CC, Like I can bring whatever I want. I could just I just have to go 6 and 2. Like that's like doable for like so many decks. I think that's so much easier to deal with as a format. I think that's why you see things like Fi and everything else like top that typically I think at tier 4 events you can see a lot of the outside the box decks top because CC isn't as important, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of my Fi success was at split events.
Yeah, just 6-0 your draft and play
I
whatever you
didn't play
want.
any not split events, but still.
Okay, for our main topic though for today is should you main a deck? What are the advantages of maining a deck? Why would you not main a deck? Um, do you think this helps your win percentage? Is this is it better to just be able to play whatever's good? Um, who wants to start us off a little bit on this topic?
I'll start. I think the number one thing is that it's kind of dependent on how much time you have and what resources you have access to. If you're constrained on both of those, I think you 1000% should main a deck and just get really good at it and learn all the matchups. As you have more time and resources, I think there's obviously a ton of benefits to being flexible so you can adjust to the meta and that kind of thing. I'm like pretty in favor of having a main deck, even if you're not playing that deck at any given event, like having a fallback when things are getting a little scrambly leading up to the event, like some crazy Dash IO just went 16-0 and the whole meta just shifted. Being able to fall back on a deck, or if like say you're innovating Dash IO and you realize, oh, this deck actually just loses to any deck with a 4 block in it. Having Fi to fall back on, like in my case, is really helpful.
Pheano, thoughts?
I 100% agree with that on the whole time aspect. I am definitely someone that falls into the one trick category in this game. It was Prism, then it was Dromai,
It's
then
the
it
best
wasn't
place
New
to be,
Prism,
though.
so it was still Dromai.
You're even more of a one trick than most one tricks. You one trick a class.
Mm-hmm. That's a good statement there. I think there's other aspects of this too. Arsenal Pass actually had an episode about this recently, and I definitely agree with a lot of their points on that. Where there's also just becoming a specialist in a play style, where it could be like. I haven't had really the opportunity to flex this in another character in this game yet, but I don't actually feel like I'm an illusionist main. I feel like I am a specialist in this particular play style, and we've only had 2 heroes that are really reflective in this play style. Dash with the item plan kind of touched on it a little bit of this more grindy permanent based game plan where I'm trying to take this game to an inevitability game state and I can win through this. Guardian doesn't necessarily play in that same way. It's really just been illusionist that's like really in this niche, and then a little bit of mechanologist. So, for example, like I'm looking at Kasai, maybe there's some potential there with the ally game plan. That might just be hopium on my part, where I see a green number on a card, and I'm like, maybe there's something there. But so I do think there's specialists in certain play styles, and I think we've seen that in some other people in the game too, where uh, they look like they're not a specialist, but they really are, where you see certain people like jumping from like guardian to guardian to guardian and then to okay, I can't play this guardian right now, so I'm going to jump to a different defensive deck, and it's just them playing this more defensive style. Hamilton and Fang, they typically play very value oriented decks, so it's they're gravitating towards this just numbers on cards style, and it just happens that a lot of times guardian is the deck for that. So I getting away from my point though, I do think it is a good thing in this game to be a specialist. And beyond time, another big point is money. Like uh, that was a reason why I did this in other card games in the past. Like I grew up as a poor kid, and it's I got to pick that one deck because I can't afford to swap a bunch of times. So I got to learn to get good with this one deck, or that's it. I'm just not playing for a certain amount of time. And I think Fab does a really good job of that, where you can just sink a shitload of time into a deck and it really rewards you for that, because the game is so deep, and really min-maxing your game plans really gets you a lot of extra value, because games can be very close. So you just having like a couple extra percentage points in a matchup can matter way more in this game compared to like other traditional card games like Magic and Pokemon and such, where
Especially
you're
the
like,
end game.
yes.
Like if you know the end game better than your opponent, you're winning that most of the time, I feel like.
Hmm. And like when another benefit of it too is going to be like, I can now play this deck on autopilot, and that's a huge thing that I've learned
Yeah.
to love. Because prior to this, I could not do that until I started playing Prism, and I noticed the difference when Prism LL'd, and I had to learn another deck where I'm like, turn to turn, I am like in the tank about a hand
Yep.
every
It is
other turn
exhausting to
cycle.
play card game tournaments. It is so
Yeah,
exhausting.
I mentally fatigued so hard
Yeah.
at the calling. I forget the Charlotte, the Nationals too. The end of the day, I was just so mentally fatigued from having to think so much constantly. But then once I got to the point that I could autopilot draw my, that wasn't the case anymore. And then I had that extra mental space when I actually have to think about a turn once or twice a tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I mean, I used to be a one trick. I one tricked two things. They were both got banned. And then I spent a year flubbling around on decks I didn't like. And it was a lot harder to be good at the game when I didn't like the deck. I guess I don't have a play style, perhaps. I just have to like the deck to want to one trick it. And when I like the deck, I kind of obsess about it. And then I just like find every little piece of it. And I haven't found a deck since my first love, which was Chain, got banned. And then I moved to Prism, got ninth at a Lil with Prism, and then immediately it got banned. And I was like, come on, you're killing me here. And then I just spent like a year just playing whatever I thought was good at every event. And while I did decent, cashed a bunch of events, it wasn't the same level of like understanding that I had with the other two decks, right? And like my Prism wasn't the same level as my Chain, but it was my Prism understanding was much better than my understanding of like Oldhim or Phi or the other things. And I could play them at high levels and I could win events with them, but they weren't like, it wasn't the same. It's just it's different on like the minute levels. When you're building a deck for like one matchup and you have a sideboard slot that's like a blue that you put in just for one matchup because you know your deck count just needs that extra blue to tick it up. Like that's like a level of understanding of a deck and its functionality that like you just don't get when you're switching around between multiple different decks. So
I
while I
feel like
would
we got
love,
close with Icelander.
we did. Icelander
That was
was
the
like,
closest I've been in a while to having what you're describing.
no,
I think a great
I agree with
example of that minuteness was, I think that was calling Indy with that missed shackle, if you want to tell that one.
I mean, yeah, it's just like when I was playing against Hamilton, in probably definitely my worst punts I've ever made in a card game in my life. But
No,
it
we're
was,
not talking about that part though. We're
but
talking about the
yeah.
bigger
I can't talk about it
we
without
didn't
talking
have
about
to
that
mention
part.
it. We lost the game.
Yeah.
No, we don't
Earlier,
have to. That's how it works.
I think it was like round like 3 or something, like 3 or 4. I played an Art of War and he like stuffed my Art of War turn like really good with his one Blizzard. It was running one Blizzard in the deck. And because I got stuffed, I knew I needed to skip a shackle, so I could buy myself one extra round to set up my combo because my pitch stack was going to be off because I was getting stuck with cards in hand. But since I've played the fatigue match so many times, that was something I could do on the fly. I think it was mentioned like, oh, he missed his shackle, but I intentionally skipped my shackle to buy myself an extra turn because I got stuck with like 2 cards in hand on one of the rounds. So my whole count was now off. So I had to like reset my count to a certain point. And like that's like a level of adaptability that you just don't get with decks. Well, one, they have to be strong, but 2, you don't get that if you don't know it down to like every level. If you've never been in that situation before. I knew that I've played so many fatigue matches that I knew if this Art of War gets stuffed, I have to like buy an extra round for my combo turn.
We would have like whole day sessions where like you and Joe would go over how to properly count your pitch and you would do it visually, and
yeah,
it'd be like 10 of us just practicing counting our cards.
Like I want to get there again. I want to find a deck to get to that like level of expertise again. And I've been trying all year. I just cannot find anything. Icelander was very close. I would say it's my 3rd favorite deck I've ever played, but it wasn't enough for me to get to like that level of individual detail. But I would love to find another deck that I fall in love with. So that's kind of the risk of like main decking. I will say my playability after both Prism and Chain were LL'd dropped, and I had to like put in a
I
bunch
was
more
in shambles
hours.
when Chain went away.
Yeah, you had to
Yeah,
put.
I was
I couldn't
like,
pop anything for a while
I was
either.
like
Like when I
hurt.
lost Prism, it was like a year before I got my next stop.
Yeah, it was all we knew. It's like I just play Chain. It's so good. Why would I not? And then they said I can't play it anymore.
So like that's like one of the risks of being just like so hard into one deck or one style. Once it's
Mhm.
gone, trying to relearn the game. And now things are going to rotate a lot faster. While I would like
Yeah.
to be a one trick again, this whole last year has been me playing basically every single deck in the game,
Mhm.
in bringing them to higher level events, and then being okay with bringing decks to those events. So I think that's a good for us and as a team and the people who've been practicing multiple decks moving forward. But like, it's always a risk now with the increased amount of LL points. I think just your deck just disappears. Like I remember I would watch an interview with Mara, and she's like, I've never had to worry about Dromai disappearing, but if Dromai wins this next event, it's basically gone. And it didn't end up happening, but it was like a real
Mhm.
fear. You put all this time in, and then all of a sudden, like one win or one big win, and it's just gone.
Yeah. I don't want it to be the focus of this conversation, and like I've talked about it at length before, but I've been pretty vocal about the fact that I don't really like how Living Legend is right now. And I kind of want to leave it at that, but like I don't I don't like that things can just disappear like that. I I don't like the lifespan that heroes theoretically could have in the game,
Mhm.
and I don't know. I I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
I
No,
don't like
no.
it.
The oops, my favorite hero won the Pro Tour. Guess I can't play that ever again. Does feel a little bad. I think it's a little dependent on how Living Legend goes. Like if that becomes like as played as CC or close to it, then I think everything's fine.
Yep, I agree. If they give us some Living Legend events this year, oh my gosh, I'll be
Mhm.
so happy. I get to play Chain again, and they made it
Yep.
a little bit more
Keep balancing
playable.
the format.
Yep, I mean
I
I'd be
also
cool with that.
don't like a system where players have direct impact on the legality of cards. But
Yeah,
we directly impact what's Living
Yeah.
Legend by our
That's what makes the
actions,
game kind of
and
special too. Like it's like
you
kind
also
of
get
cool.
into loopholey things that like
Mm-hmm.
what's going to be the thing that gets the win at the event. Like we've had multiple heroes floating on that edge of 2 points,
Yeah.
and for sure there's some amount of events where uh, there's some handshaking going on of what actually won the event. That
yeah.
so it's
I
like
mean I agree,
No,
but
agreed.
they have to get to a point for that to even be relevant. And at that point, it's kind of a matter of time. But
being
yeah,
Prism and what was it, Briar?
Briar,
yeah.
yeah.
Like, you can't say that. We got to wait for that to be relevant.
I don't
Well,
know.
I
My
mean,
take on
like,
all these things is always it is what it is, and
yeah,
I'll do what I have to do to succeed.
I agree. I mean, I think when you're first starting the game, you should find a deck that you enjoy playing and play a bunch of it.
Mm-hmm.
But once you start going positive at your armory, this is what I would say for a new player. Pick up one deck. You can try a couple different decks, borrow a deck or something, but find a deck you like, and then just only play that deck. But
Mm-hmm.
once you start going to your local armory every week and going positive, 2-1, 3-0, whatever, however many rounds you guys have, you need to switch decks if you're
Yeah.
a new player. Because you need to start learning the rest of the decks at that point if you're brand new to the game. I see a lot of newer players. Obviously, if you can borrow a deck or afford to buy a new deck, if you can't, then just lock in your one deck. It's completely fine. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say I see a lot of players start getting success on a deck, and it makes them like never leave. And I see like they just hit a level of play and they never get past it because they're not willing to play something else because everything feels too scary or too hard or they don't have the same success. And I think like the best thing to do is main a deck, play only that. Once you start seeing a bunch of positive results, you should switch decks and try and get the same thing. Obviously, it's different if you're in like a testing cycle for a big event, but I
But you're
think
talking
that
about
will
new
build your
players, so
skills up.
I don't
Yeah,
think the new player is worried about a testing
sure.
cycle for a major.
Yeah.
The other thing too, like if you're doing that, even if you circle back to that deck that you're having success with,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
the adventure you just took on all these other decks will make you a better player on that deck because you're going to learn things playing the other decks, just like core fundamentals of the game. But also, when you're now sitting on the other side of the table as that first hero that you fell in love with, you're going to see things that you didn't see before because you've been on both sides of the table where you're like, wait, I've seen this before. I know what this is. You have this in your hand, and you just open your third eye and learn how to play the game much better.
Yeah, I think moving forward, I'm worried for the people who are main decking one deck, just because of the rate of LL points that are currently happening. And I know more than most people what it feels like to lose both of your heroes and then just flounder around for a while. And I think with the recent, my advice to One Tricks would be start playing other decks now to try and find a secondary deck just in case. Obviously, put as much time into your main deck. You can bring it to all your events, but just have like some backup plans. Because my backup plan was Prism, and then it immediately got banned the next tournament that I played it in, and I didn't have a third backup plan at that point. Um, and it was tough. Um, but I'm hoping to find another main deck moving forward, and then a whole year of experience playing every single deck in the game will then pay off, in that regard. But
Playing the long game over here.
yeah, or at least that's what I tell myself, right?
So you're saying I shouldn't be spending this downtime playing Honkai? I should instead learn another deck?
Yes. I will say I loved LL in the idea of it before we got the new heroes. And I want to touch on that a little bit. It's just that like Vincent was very disappointing to me as someone who was looking forward to the next chain deck. It was not chain. It's not chain. I actually like the deck quite a bit. It's fun to play. It has some interesting stuff to it. But like it didn't replace.
It doesn't scratch the same itch.
No, it didn't replace chain for me. It didn't. I lost one hero, which is arguably very broken and very overtuned. Would not fit in the current scape of the game. But like I didn't get a replacement for that hero. And it was like, for me, it's like the same with Prism. I loved Prism. I was looking forward to the next Prism. No one loves Prism more than Pheano. And we didn't get another Prism, in my opinion, that came back. I know you've been pretty vocal about how you feel about it, and maybe that's turning around. The Prism deck's not as bad anymore as it was at first release. It's actually playable now. But I didn't feel like I got my hero back. The biggest
thing is like the identity of the deck didn't feel the same in either case.
Yeah.
Where like I know for you a big part of Chain, and then you liked it in a different way with Vincent, was like the puzzle solving of it, of like the minutia. And you loved that with Prism too. On old Prism, you loved the minutia of all these little details of the during the game and everything. And it's just not quite the same with either of these new heroes. So they were both very complex heroes in different ways. Like Prism, with your playing with life total of how close can you get to death to create board state and just like stabilizing. Where with Chain, it was this like 19D chess of setting up your pitch stack and creating this crazy late game. And neither of them quite do that. Like even if we ignore meta relevance of Prism, for example, just the gameplay of it isn't the same. Me just going ooga booga play a herald doesn't hit the same as that strategic feeling you had playing auras. Like you felt very in control of the game when you did that, even when it felt like you were losing. And the amount of agency you had over the game, like that was a big part of old Prism, agency. New Prism, you're just like, yep, I can either play a herald or I can play a herald. Like I don't my hand isn't modal.
Yeah, to me, I think the like hefty bannings we saw of the Living Legend format kind of says to me that they're treating that as the solution to what you're both describing. Like we're not going to get one-to-one replacements, right? But if we have a good, healthy format where you can just play your favorite heroes that are really strong, then I think that works pretty well. That does introduce the Oldhim issue that people are complaining about. Like, why did he get super nerfed and now he's unplayable? But I don't know. They can't solve it all, right?
I'm so hopeful on Living Legend like that.
Mm-hmm.
I personally need Living Legend to be good, because that's going to be the thing that I sink my teeth into and becomes my favorite format of any game.
I mean, I can see it being the most popular format for sure. Like in the future,
it's like that and PvE. I need both of those to hit right, because for people that don't know, prior to Fab, I'm a casual commander player. So like having that thing to sink my teeth back into of this like nice multiplayer format, I need that so bad. But then competitively, I need Living Legend to be good for me to have this place to kind of. I don't know if he's still uploading it or not, but we had like a whole talk about that on Saints channel with Yuanji, where we were talking about like what Living Legend needs to be, and like I had a whole tangent on that of like what Fab was kind of sold to me as, and Living Legend is going to be what Fab was sold to me as, this place that I can like master a deck and play it into the ground.
Yep.
And you can't LSS never said that's what the game is. That's just kind of what the game was sold to me as, and the direction I would like to see the game go. The game isn't made for me though. But if that can scratch that itch, I'm more than happy.
That's a hot take. That the game isn't made for you as an individual.
Yeah.
I mean, I just want an LL Calling announced, so I have an excuse to really dig into the format.
Or Battle Harden Philly. We'll take that.
We'll take Battle Harden Philly as well. I'll take that. I'll dig a decent amount for the Battle Harden just as an excuse. I just need a reason to like really put in the time to like build out what Chain's supposed to look like and put in all the reps and stuff.
Give me a reason to dust my girl off.
Yeah, just give me an excuse that's not just like throw something together, for a weekend.
Ooh, Philly would be great because then I could just drive the statue home.
True. Make it a pro tour. Who cares? Let's do this. Make it a cruise.
Yeah. Make it a 3 rounds at Worlds. Let's go.
Yep.
I would be fine with that, by the way. I'd be completely content with having 3 of my rounds be LL format at Worlds.
Better than Blitz.
Make it the top 8 of Worlds. Not too far. Too far?
Actually, one thing
that'd be so sick though.
That'd be so sick.
To Blitz is such a like rapidly changing format that a lot of people don't really play. Like I would say there's a good portion of the competitive community don't really interact with that side of the game. So when you make that one of the most important formats of the major, now it's I have to learn draft for the new set, I have to learn CC for this new format, and I have to learn Blitz from almost scratch. That's just too much for me to learn in a short amount of time. It's like, how am I allocating my time appropriately here? Where something like Living Legend, a lot of it should remain the same over large portions of time, right? Because it's just going to be the broken stuff slamming into each other. So it's
once it's like sort of defined and solved initially. Agreed.
Like, oh, I've learned how to play Prism into all these decks already over the years. Oh, there's a new deck that's happened to break into the format because like Dash IO is good enough that I can hang. Let's say, for example, okay, I need to learn one matchup. Okay. Like that's way more palatable for a major event.
Yep. Also, I personally don't like Blitz because I'm not trying to play Yu-Gi-Oh where I win in like 2 rounds or 3 rounds or.
I love Blitz.
I know
it's attack for 20 every turn.
The game might be like you can play it very long, but the game typically comes down to like 1 round and just being like, here's my throw up turn, and then it's just mopping up afterwards because they had to block with their whole hand. They took a bunch of damage, and now every single one of your attacks is lethal, so you just eat their whole hand for the rest of the turn. It might still be 9 rounds before they die, but like the game's already over. Like we both already know that, right? And I don't like, it's just like, let me just do my big thing one time. And whoever does it first typically wins the game. There's a lot more subtlety than that, but it's just like not how I'm trying to play Fab. And I started on Blitz. Like Kano was my first hero that I ever played, and it was in Blitz. So, okay. So I think to circle back to the original topic, because we went a bit off a tangent here. I think that maining a deck has a ton of upside. Being a one trick has a ton of upside. It does allow for easier play, more minutia. The downsides would be at some point you do need to play other decks. You will gain a huge amount of skill by doing that. And if your deck rotates, you're going to drop in skill quite a bit between the 2 decks, and it's going to take a big recovery period. Or it can, unless there's something that you can jump right over to. Any other thoughts on if you should main a deck? My answer is you should not main a deck in the middle part of your Fab career. So you should start off by maining a deck. In the middle, you should not main any decks. You can have one that's your favorite, but you should play everything and try and play them well and understand them. And then when you get to the highest point of your Fab career, you should go back to maining a deck. Because that you need those edges in top level play.
I think like ideally it's main like 2 decks theoretically.
Yeah.
Kind of like what you did for Lil. Like I think that was ideal. Just you should have picked a deck that wasn't also about to rotate. Like imagine if you had picked Oldhim for that instead. and you sunk all that time into Oldhim, well, then you would have gotten to play that for nationals also,
Mhm.
which you did, and then you would have been able to play that for another almost a year, right? So it's like pick something that's halfway through its lifespan theoretically as your deck. It's just like rotate in decks into your thing at least of okay, what I should be doing right now. You know, do what I say, not as I do. Of I'm at a point that I'm happy with Dromai. I should pick another deck that's not close to LL like Dromai is. Like I should pick maybe one of the new heroes or one of the heroes that's come out recently and doesn't have that many points yet, Prism, and make that my secondary main deck. Or ideally, uh, you can combine these, but pick a second main deck that attacks the meta in the opposite direction of the deck you already main. So like I main Dromai. What do I not want to see? A ninja meta, for instance, or something like that, or maybe I don't want to see a brute meta. So I should pick a deck to main that is good when those things are good. So I'm not really sure offhand what beats both brute and ninja. Maybe it's just ninja. Just play the ninja mirrors and beat brutes, but uh, just pick something else that's like kind of going the opposite direction or has an opposite matchup spread so that way you can kind of bounce between them depending on where the metas go. Like that would have been good to do for me for the world's meta, where it was pretty obvious Ninja was going to pick up in popularity, and then especially afterwards, it was very obvious it was going to be popular at the 20k. So maybe I should bring something else that's better in that situation. I didn't really have another thing that was as comfortable with Dromai, so I just sent it both times.
Yep, I think that's a really good point. Dan, final thoughts on the topic?
No, I just agree. I think there's a lot of benefits to maining. Like for me specifically, like getting done with my games faster is like a huge benefit I've learned. I've dabbled in the fatigue world this year, and I've determined that's not something I can really consider for tournaments. I thrive off of the 10 to 20 minute break time I get by playing my proactive decks, my first cycle decks. So keep that in mind too.
Cool. Now, next we have a bunch of Discord questions. These questions are asked by people who are a member of our premium Discord. If you would like to have your questions asked in the next episodes, feel free to join the link below. So let's start with the first question. And it says, I know it is early to ask, but do you think any of the new heroes will have weird problems? For example, I can see Olympia having not a good way to spin the gold, and Victor maybe not
Mm-hmm.
having enough cards to make gold. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's from Millen. So, is there any of the new heroes that stick out to you that just kind of go, oh, this is kind of a problem and I don't know what to do with it? I
I
can
mean,
say,
same
yeah,
line of
go
thought
ahead.
for Betsy.
Same line. Is like
Like
what?
if there's
What?
not enough good cards to wager,
Mhm.
I think then she doesn't have a hero ability, right?
Yep. I know mine is. I'm worried Kasai won't have enough offensive options to deal with decks that don't try and block. I think
Mm-hmm.
Kasai just like beats up on decks who want to block it. They're like, oh, you're trying to give me 2 cards? Oh, so easy. But as soon as they're just like, no blocks, you're like playing a whole different game. And I'm worried that she's not going to get a way to get over that hump, and that'll just be like her downside, right, to her deck. I guess you could also
Yeah.
say, Pheano, if you want to go. I don't want to take anyone's.
I haven't put enough thought into this question, and I haven't really been thinking about the new heroes that much because I wasn't really planning on playing them. So like, uh, I think the biggest question I have is just going to be how do these two new guardians differentiate themselves from Bravo, and um, not really a problem for the heroes necessarily, but kind of a it's not really the answer to this question, but a problem that I foresee and I would like to not see this happen would be these heroes are really tied to mechanics specific to the set, like wager and such.
Mm.
It, is that going to be something that we see future support for in other sets? Are we going to see expansion slot cards for those types of things, or are they going to be left in the dust where we go a lot because that's a very specific keyword for them to get support for. Um, Otherwise, it's just going to be like we get warrior support or guardian support, and that's just for all of the heroes. Where getting targeted support for them might be hard to fit into sets, but that's what the expansion slots for. So I'm hopeful for that. I see that as a potential problem.
Yeah, I think
Not
most
really the answer to the
heroes.
question that you were asking. Just
I think the default is most heroes have nothing to do with their gold. Kasai
Mhm.
does. Like we have one payoff card for Kasai. It's a great payoff card, so I'm not complaining about that at all. But almost every hero, you're just like, I get gold. What do you do with it? Eh, profit.
Yeah.
I want to
Like
see a
that's
buyback
that
period,
is essentially the whole thing. What is that?
Yeah.
okay, funny. So Victor, it could be like Thor, where he throws his hammer and it comes back, but instead of it coming back, it's just he pays someone to go grab it for
I like it. But no,
Dan, what,
I'm with you, Cody.
With enough money, you too can be a superhero. It's like Tony Stark.
yeah.
Yeah, I think like finding ways to get value out of your gold and like interacting with the clash mechanic your hero has and what's the other one? Wager. It just introduces a lot of deck building questions and like balancing. And like we've seen this in the past where like if the balance that you need to like support your hero ability is less powerful than just not, it's kind of awkward. So I could see that with the heroes we mentioned, the two guardians and Mr. Gold. I don't know his
Mr.
name.
Gold.
Olympia.
So you're
Yeah.
saying I could jump through all these hoops to get a small benefit, or I could just play a wounding bowl.
Or I could play Crippling Crush. That's my big thing. Is like, bravo, there's new stuff, and you have Crippling Crush.
Just rotate WTR.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think what you want to see is like consistent, like easy to do play patterns on these heroes. Like Betsy's, you play the one pump, you pay 2, you attack your weapon or whatever. Like that's pretty good. But it's 3 cards. It's like I don't know.
Yep, I think Betsy looks good so far.
Mhm.
But we'll have to see. We so excited just 1 week. Okay.
Yeah, I really don't like this down period. It bums me out.
I wish they would spread out the spoilers so that they would like be trickling in and we could get like more and more pumped.
Or
it was just
way
like
longer from the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah. It was just like, oh, here's some things. I'm starting to get pumped up, and then it was just like dead. Right now, it's just dead. I'm so sad.
Yeah, I would have loved to see like them. I'm assuming this isn't all the expansion slot cards. Them do just one expansion slot card every day until we get the big drop of spoilers. I think that would have been pretty good.
Just something. Okay. Next question here.
I don't know. Spoiler season was pretty much done for me after my spoiler.
So, thoughts on testing the new heroes with this many cards known? Is it a waste of time? Is it useful to understand hero abilities? Is it a bad thing? Does it skew matchups? This comes from Thargor. So, do you think it's worth testing new heroes right now?
I mean, Cody, I think you should take that. We were just talking about that at the beginning of the thing.
Yeah, I'll just say it's certainly non-zero benefit.
Yep. I mean, I've been testing Kasai with current cards, and I've never played Kasai. So I was like, I'll build it with what we got, and then I can easily slot in new cards because I'll know the issues, right? And I know what cards are like. What are my B tier cards? Like, what are these cards like? They're in here because I need cards in those slots, but I don't have enough good ones. So let's see. And like, I think that's all super beneficial. So playing Fab is typically more beneficial than not playing Fab, unless you like really need a break or something. But I would say you should play them if you want to play them.
Yeah, even like a step before that, I was playing like Brutes and Guardians to prepare for this set before I knew what the new heroes were because I haven't really played them in the past.
Yep.
Which I chose Leviathan, so it didn't help that much, but at least I know I don't like scabskin leathers now.
I think my take on that is a little different. It's first, do you have a better use of your time? Like, do you think there's a reasonable chance that you might just play one of the older heroes as already established? Like, oh, I haven't really sunk in a ton of time into Azalea, and she seems pretty reasonable into the upcoming meta, for example. Maybe I could just learn Azalea and wait for the rest of the spoilers and then look at the new stuff. Like, is that a better use of my time? Maybe I should do something like that. If that's not the case, and you're just like, no matter what, I'm playing one of these new heroes. No matter what, I'm playing Kasai. Then, yeah, playing Azalea is not going to help you learn Kasai. Put your time in, because one of the things that can do is help you identify problems with the deck with what you currently have, so you know what you're looking for throughout spoiler season. So, like, let's say Kasai, you're like, man, I really don't have go-agains in the deck that I like. for example. Like, I mean, this just like isn't the go again effects that I'm really looking for to like really pump out the damage and let me utilize these soldier Centauri token things. So when I see spoilers come out and I see an effect that has something that fills a hole that I identified that the deck has, that right there, that's a good card. And then you can.
It's like the Vincent spoiler.
Which one?
The Vincent spoiler. We needed more Runechan consistency, and we got it.
Did we?
We still need more, but it gets Runeblood Incantation.
I just forgot that card existed.
Same.
It was my first thought. I was like, oh, that helps one of the issues I had.
Maybe. Only if you already have. Only if you're floating already some Rune Chance, but because then it won't have go again, and then you didn't do anything with your turn, and the problem is that you don't always get to attack, which is bad when you go down in numbers and you're a numbers deck. But
I think the problem that you run into when you're testing stuff before it's out is a lot of times your time is just thrown out the window. Like nothing, you're gonna mess around with all these new cards from the minimal spoilers we have, and then the deck's just gonna look absolutely nothing like what you're doing. Because a lot of times too, what they do in Fab is they sandbag a lot of stuff too. So like we're like, how does this work? And then we get everything, and we're like, oh, this is like nothing like what I thought it was gonna be. And if you were trying to go one direction and then everything came out and it's completely different, well, everything you were doing over here just like didn't matter, and you just wasted a week of your time.
Well, I think it's way more of like a mindset and intention thing. Like, don't go into testing a barely released hero with the intent of solving the hero. Like, do what you guys were saying earlier of go into it with the goal of understanding the issues.
Or question, like...
Yeah.
Like...
Or just learning the play patterns of the hero.
But that's also just like a broader... If you're listening to this, like that's just how you should be doing play testing, period. It doesn't matter what type of play testing you're doing. If you're not sitting down for play testing with a question in mind or
intent
something like
is
that,
very important.
Like if you're just jamming games into your buddy or Talishar and you're just like, those were games. Those were the games of all time. you got nothing really out of that other than reps. And that's not... like you do need reps, but like get more out of your time. Answer a question.
Yep. I think it's a good point. Next question here by a Bramble Spark. If you were going to Calling Queenstown and the cards not yet known would be spoiled the eve of sealed calling, how would you prepare for that in one night? So essentially he's asking, hey, I'm going to calling. I'm not, it's a sealed calling. I'm not going to know all the cards in the sealed deck until like the night before, maybe. So any advice on how to prep for that? No, I've never been in that situation. That's my initial thought. It's like,
should we do a live stream for the people?
Have fun.
Have them prep.
Have them prep. No idea.
Content. All the people at Queenstown would watch that.
I'd say probably don't cram. Like don't try and memorize every card and like dissect every card. I don't know. Just find the first thing that's I got nothing.
It's sealed, so it's value, right? It's just value is sealed most of the time. So just
we just did an episode on this.
Yeah, so you don't really need to know all the cards. You can open them, and you'll be like, "Oh, a 3 for 7. I put that in deck. Ooh, another 3 for 7. I put that in deck." You just whatever gives you more numbers in sealed, and you have like a good pile of, because this might be a kind of grindy seal format, just like off the top of my head. You just isolate how many big number things that you have that are very efficient, and then you just play that deck.
Yeah,
like that's like
rely on the fundamentals.
Yeah, that's how I think you got to tackle it.
I think a good use of your time, because in this scenario you are on very limited time because you got to sleep. Like I think it's far more important to go into the event well rested and not be a zombie. I think just spending time talking about the cards with like your buddies, maybe even just get on Discord with some people if you can, and just talk about the interactions and the cards themselves and see if people see things that you don't see. So that way you can go into it with more of an idea of what's going on than the person next to you. Because you're going to just figure out stuff just talking to people a lot of the times. Like, oh yeah, you're right. This 2 costs are really good in bright lights because a lot of my cost curve is revolving around my weapon that costs 1 or something like that. Yeah, maybe I should go more towards 2 for 5s. And like, if I was just going on heuristics, I would only be going for 3 for 6s, but maybe that's less efficient than a 2 for 5. And like, obviously you're just going to play both in that scenario. But you being able to identify those kind of like little obvious things just by talking to people that just maybe weren't obvious to you, I think there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, I think I would start by immediately reading all of the token weapons, and probably reading the rare weapons too. But like, read the token weapons once we know them and how they interact with the respective heroes, and then kind of just use that to figure out what cards work best with each.
Yeah, and maybe try to identify like how each of the heroes is trying to win and how they lose, and just like really broad strokes types of things. And I think one of the harder things when you're early on in limited format too is going to be identifying where your generic or like dual class cards are supposed to go. Like, if I open a bunch of let's go to bright lights again. If I open a bunch of the 1 cost pumps, where do those go? If I'm just first looking at the cards, I'm just gonna go, that doesn't block for 3 I sleep. Where if I open a ton of reds, maybe I was just supposed to be max, but I didn't realize that's where those are supposed to go. So just kind of identifying the homes of all of the more open cards.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think to your earlier point, if you have access to a team or the Runaways Discord, ask us. Like, post pictures of the cards, be like, hey, is this what's the best here? Like, what should I be looking for? That kind of thing. Ask questions. Work together.
Yep. Great. Next question here, also by Fighting Walloon. It says, with 3 Bravos in the top 8 of BH Cincinnati and 0 Azalea, does anyone owe Lucas an apology? And I will say no. He didn't win, and we did tell him he wasn't going to win. And he's not here, so... But in a more
like,
serious...
I don't know,
Go
if
ahead.
the best players in the room are going to play Bravo, then Bravo's going to win.
Yep.
It is what it is.
I would also say...
No offense to anyone else. Michael Hamilton's pretty good at the game. Yeah. So is Lucas.
Except for Lucas. We can give offense to Lucas.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think... I think we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I don't... In a serious note, like, I don't think results of a tournament reflect the actual state of the game in most cases. They just reflect the people at the tournament and the who showed up on that day or what cards were drawn on that day. I still... And we don't have enough stats to be able to back it up. I think Bravo is good, and I think we said it on the podcast that Bravo is a good deck. It's just like really linear, pretty straightforward, and like you just get in bad game states where you just can't win, and you're just sitting there hoping the whole time, and that's like just not a way we like to play the game. And that's like
some of us just don't like the deck.
Yep. But he did well.
It also doesn't tell the full story of like Swiss.
Correct.
Like,
oh yeah, I know nothing about this event other than Lucas made us the top 4, and then Roger and Michael played a friendly game in the finals. Like, I don't...
Like, you could see
no
some Bravos in the top and go, wow, Bravo must be really good into what I have as a perceived meta. And then you just realize Bravo just didn't even play any of those decks.
Yep.
What happened in the tournament cannot be reflective of the actual metagame.
Yep. But I think we did say he was going to top with it. He just was going to lose.
Oh yeah, he was always going to top 8.
Yeah, he's always going to top 8. It's Lucas.
He's a genius.
He just believes in himself enough. Next question. It's
important.
It is. Are there any CC heroes that feel like they are 1 or 2 new cards away from having a much bigger impact in the meta? And that is Sketchy Man and White Van.
Certainly depends on the quality of the card, but
just do you think there's any decks in that position where if they got 1 or 2 new good cards, then they would
just
go
like generically good, like a 0 for 4 type or 0 for 5 type power, right?
Maybe
like
more than that.
I mean, like, if Max got a tutor for the mech suit, then I would choose Max. Like, it's
true.
It depends, right? Like, that's too far, obviously.
I mean, I'm thinking like Vincent is 1 Channel Mount Heroic away from being a good deck. Like,
I think
it just needs 1 payoff. Like, just give me a reason and a catch up mechanic to play the deck. I know I'm not going to get it. I know the devs have already said that they're too afraid of the ability of playing free attacks, so it's just going to be underpowered forever. But like, it's like one channel mount heroic away from being like, this is a good deck that you must respect.
Yeah, I feel like most decks, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say Runeblade Ninja just as a whole. Like
Mm.
they are sometimes doing very powerful things, but not consistently enough.
Mhm.
You make that consistent. Like if we lived in Magical Christmas Land where Ninja and Runeblade always did the good stuff in the deck, well, those decks would just be broken. But that's not reality.
Maybe reprinted Unbanned Belittle. That would do it.
Okay. Next question here is, what sleeves do you use? Do you double sleeve? And how do you store your cards for easy access? And that's from Julian.
I use
ahead.
Dragon Shields.
Dragon Shield.
For now. I might not always, but I haven't had the quality control issues, so I use Dragon Shields. I don't double sleeve. I did when I started. I don't like the extra work. I'll play my Marvel. I don't have a Marvel Command and Conquer, but I would play it in a single sleeve. I don't really care. If I was playing it, that is. And I store my cards. How do I do it? I do commons by set, separate rares by set, and foils by set, and then majestics and above are in a binder.
I use only purple katanas, and I use a new pack of sleeves every tournament, every like major event. I will use the same sleeves for like Pro Tours or like not Pro Tours, but like Pro Quests and like Road to Nats and stuff like that. But anything that is battle hardened and up, essentially, I will sleeve a new box of katanas, because if you ever used katanas, they shuffle amazing, they feel great. They're on one tournament deck sleeve, but there's never quality control issues, and they're like butter. I don't like Dragon Shield because I've had a lot of their crimping on the sides be in different spots. They have like glue spots on the side of their sleeves, and it'll be like make like a ribbon down them, which I'm not very happy about. And they're kind of a pain to shuffle, in my opinion. And then I don't double sleeve, but I'm like known at my local. Like every time they get like a shipment of purple katanas in, I just like walk over, but I will take all of the ones that are on the shelf, and then I have to wait 4 more months for more purple katanas to come back in. Like literally, like behind me, there is just like 20 boxes of purple katanas because that's all I use.
You have some store credit there, I assume.
I have lots of store. Well, I had a lot of store credit. I have 20 boxes of katanas.
Right.
They're like $15 a pop. So like they're not cheap, but they are by far, in my opinion, the best sleeves that I have ever used. But you don't all have
I
to be
do
crazy.
Dragon Shield.
So go ahead. I said you don't all have to be as crazy as me. Is all I was going to say.
No, I'm planning to swap when I run out of my Dragon Shield stock. I've seen the issues. I just haven't experienced them.
Okay.
I do Dragon Shield. I bought a metric fuck ton of the same one to make sure it's all similar batch. And I do the same thing every major. I brand new pack of sleeves, and then what I do is I end up just re-sleeving my deck for the major, and then just using those same sleeves all through the whatever the qualifier season is. And then okay, qualifier season's over. We're going into the next major, and I re-sleeve around then, so that way I can kind of break them in over the next week. I'm weird. I double sleeve sometimes. It depends. Like, I put Marvel Dragons in my deck. I am now double sleeving. But before, I was like, oh, there's nothing of value in this deck. I don't care. As far as storage, I'm not good about organization of storage with my stuff, but I usually try to, like, have I'm knocking everything over, have just like a binder of my playables, of just like, this is my deck building binder, so that way I can the intent, and I usually don't end up doing it because I'm lazy, is bring it with me when I go to events in case I need to like change something, so it's like my expanded sideboard or whatever. Was there anything else in that question? I feel like I missed something.
No, you hit it all. Okay, next question here is from McNutty, also known as Dan's brother. And it is, what do you think are the weaknesses of the new Kasai in CC?
Oh, you already hit on that.
We did already hit on it.
It's the decks that say no blocks, I do more damage.
Yep. So if they're blocking you, it's great. If they're not blocking you, you're like, oh, I hope my hand does enough damage to race you, which is kind of an issue. But we have seen no cards literally for Kasai
Yep.
basically, so it's not much of an we. That's just the current issue with the current card pool.
And then that kind of goes to that point earlier of you play tested, you identified a problem, so now you know what you're looking for in spoilers. Okay, something that can either scale really well value wise or punishes that kind of play style.
Yep. Next questions are from Dalton, who is a team member and also one of the best Marvelverse system players, if not the best ever in the game. His first question is in line with this: is what is your favorite TCG, current or past, to play other than Flesh and Blood, and what did you like best about it? And I just mentioned it. It's a Marvelverse system. Is by far my favorite card game of all time. I won several scholarships for college because I was a young lad at the time and was allowed to play in the sub 18 tournaments. I also played in 10Ks and other ones, but I was a kid and that game was relatively complicated, so I wasn't top tier. They also had like a very huge like pro tour circuit type of deal as well. I love that game because you could deck build almost anything in the game together. Some things were meant to be, but you would basically get like a class, but you could mix classes is the best way to think about it. And you could mix three classes and you could just keep mixing classes together as much as you wanted. And obviously there were a bunch of downsides to that, but that was pretty nice. And also there was a thing called the formation step, which is you have permanents on the board and you have to arrange them in rows in certain ways based on how you think your opponent's going to attack you in order to protect them. And it was incredibly complicated, which made it great. And certain things couldn't attack from the back row and certain things could only attack from the back row. And so like, was trying to balance this around and you couldn't like protect a guy unless you had a guy behind him. And so like, it was pretty cool.
I bought like a course set on Black Friday for like $8 to play with my brother. It's got like 400 cards. I have no idea how to play, but nice. I hope one day to play it.
Is that still an ongoing game or?
No, they did like a living card game version of it. It's not the same game. It has different rules. Okay. But the original game was great. It was my favorite of all time. But Dan, what is your favorite card game of all time? That's not Flesh.
Yeah, my previous one was Star Wars Destiny. That was my first like game I competed in. Before that, I played like online games. I tried a Magic draft and I just got like roll sharked and dumpstered by like a 12-year-old. So I was like, maybe this isn't for me. But no, Destiny was the first game I got really into. Found it fun. I had a local store, so it was perfect. I went to the first World Championship. It was like my third month playing, and I did like way above my expectations. I was like, wow, I gotta keep going to these events, and that's kind of why I play so much Flesh and Blood and travel so much. My favorite current game that's not Flesh and Blood, is Alpha Clash. I'm dabbling a little bit in that game. I like the art and that they're making like their own IP, like Flesh and Blood. They're doing comic books and stuff. And the game's pretty fun. It's like super degenerate. Like every card is like a 2-for-1, way above rate, and you're just throwing haymakers.
Pheano?
So, obviously, Flesh and Blood would be the answer. That is best card game I've ever played in my entire life. Not even close. Not close. I could go on for hours gushing about Flesh and Blood. So there's like two games. Magic, the easy answer, but that was spending time with friends and just had a good community and everything. And honestly, it Magic didn't even matter for that. It was just the people that made it good. As I said before, Commander, I was a big Commander player, and that we had a great Commander community, and I still have a soft spot for that. I wish that was still ongoing. If that group didn't die, I would have never actually played Flesh and Blood, to be honest. Like the only reason I even looked at Flesh and Blood was because it died the same week they like made the announcement of the end of the MPL for Magic, and then Rudy or the professor made the video talking about Flesh and Blood. And I was like, all right, I'll try another fucking game. I'll try something. And then I was like, wait, this game's insane. For actual gameplay though, my favorite game I ever played was a digital card game called Duelist. Me and Ethan will talk about that sometimes.
Game's so good. Really so good.
Yeah, that was...
Wait, are we playing Duelist 2 or no?
I haven't been, but that's been because of Flesh and Blood.
Okay. I have it downloaded.
I also don't want to I don't want to regrind my collection. That was a pain in the ass. But I played the shit out of that. That was like the only other game I really took seriously. I was like top 50 on the ladder every month. I actually did content for that game back in the day too. Oh, it was so much fun. If I imagine like 99% of people watching this have no clue what the hell I'm talking about. Essentially, take the game, like the card game mechanics of Hearthstone, get rid of like all the RNG bullshit of that game, and play it on an isometric grid with turns that function kind of like Fire Emblem, where you like move all your guys and they move all their guys. If you've ever played Genesis Battle of Champions, it's kind of like that, but way better. I tried that game for a hot second, being like, "Ooh, isometric grid TCG, say less." And then I played it, and I was like, "That ain't it." Uh, it was just mechanically very very good, and I have a soft spot for pixel art too. So I don't know, the game was just really really good. Uh, I always played Abyssian. That was my class. That was real fun. Uh, I played the one where you made the creep tiles that you'd get enough creep tiles and then you play the card that just dealt the damage to your opponent for every creep tile you control. It was very Dromai-esque of just hitting this inevitability. I love playing the inevitability decks.
Yeah, I think that game was like not marketed properly. The game is very good, and everyone that I know who like tried it was like, "This game's great." Like, but just not enough people tried it or even heard of it as well. But no, Duelist is a great pickup there. Last question of the night is also from Dalton, and is what is the right amount of time after a hero hits LL before we get a new version? Do you think we'll see or get new elemental heroes so that Tales of Aria cards are playable again?
I think the right way is what they're doing right now. Actually, we're getting them preemptively. We got the new warrior guardian brute before they've LL'd. We got the new mechanologists before Dash LL'd. I think that's the best way to go about it, because now you don't have this period of time where you're like, now what do I do? Well, you already have this transition path. Maybe you already, I'm a Dash main. Well, this new Dash looks interesting. Let me sink some time into this. And now when your hero leaves, you've already spent some time in the new hero, so it's less painful. I really like that. I hope they keep doing exactly that.
I think it's a good point. I mean, to answer the second part of the question, I don't think we're seeing an Oldhim replacement for a very long time. And I don't think we're getting elemental card heroes for a very long time. I don't expect those replacements to actually happen anytime soon. It's too powerful. Those card bases are too strong. I don't think you can make a guardian that's like Earth and Ice. Like I just don't like it. It's just too good. You got to start banning stuff.
He doesn't have to be Earth Ice.
True.
He's an elemental hero.
Yes.
I agree. I think they're going to lean on classes as replacements and not the class plus talent combination going forward.
I'm wondering if they might, when we get the arcane set, that might be when we get the new elemental set. They can do elemental runeblade, elemental wizard, and elemental ranger in that set. All of them could theoretically be arcane. Like I could see an arcane ranger.
Yeah.
Like a lightning arcane type of shenaniganry. And they could maybe just make each of them mono element, and that could be the knob they turn.
Mm-hmm. I think they did mention before we'll get Ice again, but we'll get Ice when they come up with a good idea of how to play Ice, like a new way, a new mechanic.
There's no way they implement it the same way.
Like we'll get these mechanics again when they can reimagine them in a interesting way for us to play. And I mean, Oldhim is Oldhim, but like you have Bravo, you have some things that are kind of close, but just not as powerful. And then you get a whole new Guardians now. You have Azalea, which is not really Lexi, but let's be fair, almost nobody's favorite deck is Lexi. So meh. Like I obviously I do feel bad.
I don't agree with that.
For the people
I think
who
before Outsiders,
100%.
Fans of the deck.
I really liked before Outsiders Lexi playing like the Ice and stuff was like really fun. I think after having that many times of Lexi, I have not seen anyone clamoring for their Lexi replacement.
Well, they're all hiding now because there's so much Lexi hate that they've been shunned and stoned for too long. Why would they come out?
I really think Living Legend format is the correct answer.
That's what I want. I want the people who watch this tell me if they are excitingly waiting for a Lexi replacement. And then I will apologize in the next podcast if we get enough people who say, oh my goodness, I'm waiting for my Lexi replacement. So we'll see about that. Okay. Well, I think we got to go now because Pheano did tell me he needs to play Hawkeye Star Rail a little bit more, and we got to go then. So goodbye, everyone. See ya.
Yeah, we're getting rid of the envelope here,
Seven
but
envelope.
We could do
and
here is go ahead
darkness.
and play the envelope.
All 3 pitches of Envelope and Darkness.